What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Rob's house. Today we're going to be doing a pretty controversial upgrade on the Corvette. You can see I already have it on jack stands and have the wheels removed. Today we're actually going to be installing some LED underglow. I know, controversial, I know. But you know what? I don't really care because I like it. So, you know, hate on me in the comments all you want. The Mustang's got it already. I love it. I think it looks great on that car. It's been holding up really well. I don't know if you guys go back, it was my first car related video that I posted was installing LED underglow onto the Mustang because it was pretty easy and I just sort of wanted to do it as a trial run for motorsports related content, I guess. And it's held up really well on that car. I still have it on that car. It still works fine. I haven't had a single issue. I did have to, well, I shouldn't say I haven't had a single issue. I had one issue, which was that there was a giant piece of like plastic, I'm not sure what it was, on the road that I ran over one day when I was driving down the highway, and it clipped the light strip that's underneath my front splitter. So I did have to replace that one. That said, I'm really glad that I installed it the way I did on that car, where I put quick disconnects for all of the light strips, so that if any of the strips got damaged, I could just unplug them and swap them out for new strips. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do on the Corvette today. This is kind of gonna be a repetitive video if you've watched the previous video, but if not, I'm still gonna go through it with you. I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna route the wires on and the strips underneath the Corvette. It's gonna be a little bit different than the Mustang for that purpose, but the general premise is the same. What I want to do is I want to have, so I'm going to do red underglow on this car versus blue on the Mustang, and I'm going to install it the same way, which is to say that I'm going to have it on a switch. So I've already mounted the switch in the location that it's going to be. I'll show you where that goes in the car, and we're going to tap into an auxiliary fuse the same way we did on the Mustang. So we're going to be running off of a 5-amp fuse from our fuse box. Now, in the case of the Mustang, I did it in the cabin fuse box. In the case of the Corvette, the cabin fuse box is actually under the trunk liner, so that actually would make it more difficult. So what I'm gonna do instead is we're gonna go into this fuse box here. There's an auxiliary fuse number 23, this 5-amp fuse right here. That's the one that we're gonna go into. The ground wire for the fuse box is right here. See that bolt right there? We're just gonna take that out and we're gonna put our ground terminal there. When I disconnect that, I'm probably gonna disconnect the battery first and just disconnect that and put the ground wire there. So I'll show you guys when I do that. This car is actually pretty easy to get. We actually don't have to get through the firewall like we had to do on the Mustang. If you remember on the Mustang, it was pretty annoying. We had to get underneath this, this fender liner, and then there was a rubber boot, and we had to kind of snip it and sort of like shove the wire through, but also make sure that we don't nick the wiring harness that was already coming through that hole. So it was a little bit of a pain in the butt. In this car, it's going to be a lot easier because I can simply remove this plastic cover here, and there is actually a channel that will allow me to go from the engine bay right through the side of the door, basically. So I'll show you guys when I do that, how we're going to do that, and that's pretty much it. Then we'll run the strips. I'm going to run the wires, you know, for the switch. The switch is going to be mounted in the cabin. The wire is going to come out here. We're going to have a power going to our fuse box. We're going to have a ground going to our ground wire, and then we have the power and ground leads that are going to go to the actual strips. I'm going to run that down the side of this front fender. I'm going to take this mud flap off so that I can peel the liner back a little bit, just so I can get at the wire, and then I'll show you how we do it from there. So it's gonna be a pretty straightforward install, I think. All right, so real quick before we get started, let me show you what this plastic piece is, where we're gonna mount our switch. So switch location was a little bit tricky in this car because there's a lot of leather wrap trim pieces, and I didn't want to drill a hole through that. Believe it or not, this is actually soft plastic, like textured soft plastic under here. So originally I thought I was gonna mount it like over here, kind of like how I have it in the Mustang, but what I'm actually gonna do, that piece that you saw the switch mounted on, it goes right here. If you take this trim piece off, this trim piece actually wedges it into place. So you see these holes right here, these little slits. If I go over to the actual trim piece, that's what these little, I guess you could like prong things, kind of, it just slides right in. So it'll slide in like this. And then that other trim piece actually comes over top of this corner so that this doesn't move at all. So I figured that since this is a piece of hard plastic that is relatively thin, it would be the easiest to drill through, and in fact it was. So we have our switch here. We're gonna wire it the same way as the switch in the Mustang, which is that this is our ground wire on the end. This colored gold wire is the ground. The power from the fuse box is gonna come into this middle, and the terminal on the end is the power that's gonna go to the LED strips. Now the ground has to go both to the LED strips and to the ground wire in the grounding bolt for the fuse box. So that's gonna come through. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna route that through the car, and then I'll have it split somewhere over by the fuse box so that I can route one end to the actual ground, and then the other end can go down with the positive wire for our LED strips. So that's what we're looking at, generally speaking. Then it's just gonna be, you know, laying the strips along the sides, the front and the back, and laying the wires in between those strips, and kind of just zip tying everything like I did on the Mustang to make sure that it's not flopping around, that it's not gonna get caught on anything. It will be fused, of course. Like I said, we're gonna run through the auxiliary fuse number 23. If you have a C7, that's the one that I'm going into, just in case anything shorts out. Fuse will blow, we won't have power anymore, and that's a good day because we don't want anything lighting on fire. So that's the game plan. I'm gonna get started wiring the switch up, get my wires and strips sort of like measured and cut out and all that stuff. I have a big spool of, we got a big spool of wire here. We got a big thing of double-sided tape. I have another one of these too. So if this runs out, we have our quick disconnects, and of course our LED strips. The box for this brand, they use the same packaging for all of them. So they are not blue strips, even though they look like it has, I don't know why they have blue strips on the box, but these are in fact red. I've tested them already. I bought 10 meters worth. 5 meters is not quite enough to line the car with. I like having some left over just in case stuff happens, right? Like, you know, like I said, I hit that piece of plastic in the Mustang that kind of like sliced half of, you know, kind of broke the connection to half of the front LED strip. So, you know, I have extras, not a big deal. You can just, you know, unplug it, rip the tape off, put a new one on there. So that's game plan for today. Let's get started, and I'll be back when I have everything laid out, and I'll show you guys how we're gonna route everything, and how we're gonna route the cables out of the car for the switch, and also how we're gonna route underneath the car. I am gonna have to do a little bit of disassembly of the center console to show you that, so I'm just gonna get all that prepped. I'll show you guys that when we get there. I'll be right back. Just an update for you. All right, so I disconnected the battery so that I could run the ground wire. I didn't want to disconnect the ground wire to the entire fuse box with the battery still connected, so I disconnected it. I attached my fuse, I guess you can kind of see it, but I attached it to that, that ground that's already there for the fuse box. There's a wire that I zip tied along some of these hoses. I spliced into that number 23 fuse. It's that 5 amp, the yellow one in there. That's what we're spliced into. I've zip tied everything to these hoses so they don't move. We've got a lead here for our lights, so we will plug into that and run a wire down the side of the fender to actually start laying our lights. But I just wanted to show you how this works. So to give you an idea of how I ran the wires into the cabin, you can kind of see them coming out of that. See the little daylight that you can see there? That's how you get in through past the firewall. You don't actually have to go through the firewall. You can see the wires down there. I just tucked them under this plastic trim piece, and it basically comes in through that hole. I have it coming underneath this insulation strip. You can just pull it out. All of these side trims are clips, so I just removed those so you can see the wires back here, kind of. But anyway, it's running up here, you know, along the insulation and then out to the hood. Then I just have it simply running underneath the carpet. It runs under the carpet along here. And then so in the car, the wire comes up here, and then I just have it kind of tucked back there. So this will cover it. And then we have our switch on the other side of the car. Real simple. I haven't mounted it yet, but we have our switch right here in this plastic trim piece, which will just sit right back where it's supposed to. There'll be a little bit extra wire there, but that's okay. I still wanted to be able to kind of pull that piece out if I need to like take my center console apart or something like that to do any sort of other job in the future. So anyway, we know we have power now, so that's good. I'm gonna measure and cut my LED strips, and then I think I'm gonna wire one of them up, wire the first one up with leads and just kind of plug into my disconnect here and just make sure that the switch is functioning properly, and then we can start laying the LEDs underneath the car. So I'll be right back. Let me get those measured out and I will come back with a status update. All right guys, update time. So I got the first strip wired up just to make sure that the connections from my switch are good. I'm just gonna flick that on real quick. Ta-da! I haven't actually laid it yet under the car. I made sure to give myself a lot of extra slack, so I know this looks a little bit rat's nesty, but really like this bundle here is just the wire that runs down to the strip. It was kind of hard to tell just by looking at it if I had a direct path through the fender or if I was gonna have to snake it around. It turns out I can just drop it basically straight down and it comes out right here. The mud flap goes right over this, so it'll be nice and neat. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay the strip down and then I'll take the slack out of it and zip tie it to something inside of there. So anyway, I know this, like I said, this looks a little bit much, but it's just one wire that has a lot of excess on it. All right guys, so I just wrapped the end of that wire in a little bit of electrical tape just to make sure that it doesn't actually get severed. That's just the power wire that runs from the switch. Everything's good. Like I said, our ground is good in there. So yeah, anyway, so I'm pretty much done under the hood now. Now it's just gonna be daisy chaining like I did with the Mustang, just kind of laying each strip. And then the way that I do it is I have a quick disconnect on either side of each strip. Anyway, I'm gonna get started on that. I don't think that I'm gonna do really any more filming until it's all done. I'll just show you guys the finished product. Because like I said, it's basically just gonna be, I'll show you where I lay all the strips after it's all done. But really now it's just gonna be me measuring out the strips, measuring out the connection wires that I need, and then laying them down, and then we'll be done. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll be back with the finished product soon. All right guys, I'm all done laying the strips. I just wanted to give you a quick status update. I turned them on just so you can see how I ran them. So I'll start from where we left off over here on the left-hand side. So we have our first strip that comes down right here, goes along the side skirt. And then we've got, actually routing these wires, it was a little more interesting than the Mustang, specifically because there wasn't really a good place to put this rear strip. So I actually ended up putting it on the leaf spring because this is my, my jack points are right here, so I don't want to obstruct those. And I also didn't want to tuck it too far in because then you won't be able to see the light with the car on the ground. I don't know if you can see the what that bar is, but I zip tied the wires to that. I don't know what you call that particular piece, but I guess it's not a sway bar because it's not left to right. But coming over to this side, we got the same thing. So, obviously it's all running series. So we're coming from here now, going, and yes, I'm using a jack puck for anyone wondering. Going all the way up here, and then again going along that, I guess it's like a K-member. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know the term for that piece, but that metal rod. Go along that and kind of come up along here, snake it around here, just like whatever I could zip tie it to neatly so that I don't have wires like, hanging down. Or actually this one's hanging, I gotta zip tie this better. And then we got our front strip. And then that's it. It's all on the switch. I am going to fix that one hanging wire, zip tie that a little better to something, and then I'm just gonna reassemble the car. Reassembly shouldn't take me too long. It's mostly just putting my center console back together and then throwing the wheels back on the car. Similar to the Mustang, I do have to monitor these strips to make sure that the adhesive's not failing in the next coming week. If there's certain little spots of the double-sided adhesive tape, I use this double-sided 3M mounting tape stuff that's this is gray on the inside. That's what I use to mount the strips, but on the Mustang, some of the surfaces didn't promote adhesion that well. So what I ended up doing on the Mustang was, on some of the strips, if they started to peel down, I just put a little dab of super glue on the start and the finish of each one of those strips, just to make sure that it really like bonded to the plastic under there basically. And it's super glue. I mean, I can still pull the strip off. It's not like, it's enough that it'll like hold an LED strip, but also not enough that it would like get stuck and I wouldn't be able to pull it off if I needed to pull it off for some reason. So I really wanted to get underglow on this car just because I love having it on the Mustang, and I thought it would look really, really sweet on this car. It's one of those mods that, like I said at the beginning of this video, it's pretty controversial, but I mean, you know, if I flick the light off, like, come on. That's cool. Maybe I grew up watching too much Fast and Furious. That's up for debate, but I like it. Like I said, I know it's a controversial mod, so feel free to blast me in the comments if you'd like to. Either way, I appreciate your viewership. Before we end the video, I'll just do the reassembly on the car, get it back on the ground, and I'll show you what it looks like on the ground so you can get an idea of what the glow looks like. All right, guys, car's back on the ground. Everything is put back together, and it's looking pretty good. I am pretty happy with how this came out. If anything, the only disappointment here would be that the front maybe doesn't glow as much as I would like. I maybe should have moved the strip out farther, but the side skirts look great. You know, the back I kind of knew wasn't gonna glow far out toward the back because of where I had to mount the strips. So you see, you get a little more out of the sides than you do out of the front, just because of where I had to place the strip on the fronts, but that's all right. I mean, I'm happy with it still. I mean, if you get down, you can see a lot of glow. So it's just the splitter kind of blocks it a little bit. I could have maybe moved the strip out a little bit farther, just because right now it's kind of on the back of that plastic piece. But just for the way that I had to route the wires, that placement kind of made the most sense. If I placed it closer to the front of the car, I wouldn't have really had anywhere to zip tie the cable coming off of the strip. So there would have been a little bit of wire hanging action going on, and I didn't feel good about that, so I decided not to go that route. But anyway, successful install. I think it looks good. Now both my cars have lights. It is like 4 o'clock in the morning now, so I'm gonna go to bed. All right, guys, so I made a slight miscalculation here about my switch placement. Everything turned out okay, except that when I went to drive the car the day after doing the install, the car has, behind the screen, there's a little compartment where I keep my sunglasses. Hell yeah, brother. We're repping the Cletus McFarlane YouTube channel. Shout out to Cletus. But when I hit the button, the screen only went down about halfway and then it got stuck. I realized that the leads coming off of the switch, I had put heat shrink around them so that everything was insulated properly and then electrical taped it, was obstructing the screen. I didn't even think about that originally. That was a silly mistake on my part. So anyway, I have a simple solution, which is just that I mounted the switch in my center console. You ignore all this white stuff around it. That's actually just, I put a little bit of super glue around the outside just to kind of mount this switch. And I just got to remove the excess still. But it turns out that there's quite a lot of space behind this to actually drill in here. And I ran the wires kind of along, they're basically sitting under here. I have 2 quick disconnects now going to the switch, so that if I have to take the center console apart or anything like that, I can just unplug it and pull the whole thing off. So anyway, I mean, the switch is actually a little more hidden in here, which is cool. I was a little bit hesitant to do this. I thought of this originally, but the reason that I elected not to go that route at first was because I usually put my phone in here, and I was kind of worried that like my phone would either like hit it and turn it on accident or hit it and turn it off on accident, just if it jiggles around here a little bit. So anyway, that's the reason that I originally wasn't going to go that route, but I don't really have a choice because this was obstructing my screen's track, and that's no good, right? We don't want to lose functionality, we want to gain functionality. So the only difference is the wire that comes up over here the wire that comes up over here, instead of going along the front now, it just sort of comes underneath. There's actually room underneath this bottom piece, and it won't pinch the wire. This doesn't sit all the way flat. It's bolted down, but a couple of the rails are like raised, because all of the wiring that actually goes to the controls, like your drive mode selector and your parking brake switch, need space to be routed. So there's actually plenty of space under there to route wires, so it was no big deal. So anyway, I ended up putting the switch in the glove box. So silly mistake on my part. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I know it's a controversial mod, so don't hold back. You can feel free to absolutely blast me in the comments. Anyway, as usual, I hope this video was helpful, or at least entertaining, and I'll see you guys next time.